next time, our roles could be reversed. As we progress in our practice of killing, of not killing, and compassion, the objective is not to give rise to a single thought of irritation, much less to anger. Compassion must be experienced and felt, not just understood on an intellectual level. Only when compassion and gentleness are an active part of our being will we stop reacting out of anger and hatred. Left unchecked, anger and hatred will eventually result in killing. Only when loving kindness is a functioning part of all of us will we end the wars within and between each of us and attain peace for all. Often in discussions about the precept of no killing, people ask if Buddhists, all Buddhists, are vegetarian. Actually, the Buddha never told us that we needed to be vegetarian. When he and those who were with him went on their alms round into a town to silently request food, people would sometimes place meat in their alms bowl. So the Buddha ate meat when it was offered to him. But he did provide guidance as to when eating meat was inappropriate. Buddhists are not to eat meat if we see the animal being killed for us, hear the animal being killed for us, or if the animal is killed specifically for us. Whether Buddhist practitioners choose to simply follow these 3 rules, or whether they decide to become complete vegetarians, often depends on environmental conditions and on specific cultural traditions. No matter what the reason is for not eating meat, many studies have concluded that vegetarians generally enjoy healthier lives and live longer. The second precept is to refrain from taking what is not given. By not taking anything without permission, we will be free of nagging thoughts of having done something wrong. Even if an object appears not to belong to anyone, taking it will break this precept. Not stealing also includes paying others a reasonable and fair wage for work that is done, treating others fairly in a business, and returning borrowed items in a timely fashion. Just as the deeper meaning of abstaining from killing is compassion, the deeper meaning of not stealing is giving. The third precept is usually interpreted as refraining from sexual misconduct. But this precept is actually addressing any sensory indulgence, craving for food, sensations, and much more. Not just sexual misconduct. Sensory indulgence distracts us from our inward search to find lasting happiness and freedom. It wastes our energy and leaves us with escalating wishes. We should not allow ourselves to be controlled by our senses. Instead, we need to refrain from indulging our senses. This will help us to feel more in control of our lives, to be more self-confident. The fourth precept is to refrain from telling lies. We should not deceive others for our benefit or for the benefit of those close to us. Instead of separating people with careless speech, we can use speech to bring others together, creating understanding and harmony. Not lying also means that we speak at the right time and in accordance with the facts. We are logical and say what is useful. We do not gossip or boast. By following this precept, we will find ourselves using words that are correct, honest, and beneficial. This will stop us from creating negative consequences for ourselves. Because we are honest and thoughtful, we will have the trust and respect of others. And by not offending others or causing dissension, we will get along well with people. In our practice of not lying, we need to also use wisdom and compassion. What should we do when a friend asks us how we like her new haircut? Or when you are driving to meet friends for dinner and your husband asks if what he is wearing is okay? It is too late to do anything, and complete honesty at this point will not be helpful. It would be kinder to not say that the haircut is too short or that the shirt is an unbecoming color. If our genuine intention is to avoid hurting the other person and not to flatter, then we can say the haircut and the shirt are fine. Afterwards, we can try to find the right time and way to say that the former haircut was perhaps more flattering and the shirt is not very becoming. For this, we need to find the right time. Precepts are not to be adhered to merely on a literal basis. We need to understand their logic so as to better judge how to wisely follow them. If we understand the intention behind a precept, we will be better able to adhere to its inherent meaning when encountering challenging situations. One good example of a precept that is easier to follow if one is aware of its underlying meaning is the fifth precept of refraining from intoxicants. This precept is not universally held, but the Buddha gave it to us in the hope that we would not take anything that would impair our judgment or that would lead us to harm others or ourselves. It is already difficult for us to abstain completely from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying. All of them encompass our thoughts and verbal and physical behavior in some combination. Although we can usually manage to control our behavior to some degree, restraining our thoughts is more difficult. When impaired judgment and reflexes reduce our mental restraint, which is what happens when we indulge in intoxicants, then taking them can result in our heedlessly breaking other precepts. Some people may ask, what is wrong with drinking one glass of wine with friends or having a beer with dinner? They may feel that it is okay and believe that one drink does not impair their judgment. But others might respond that this is setting a bad example for our children and those with us, and that ultimately it impacts our ability to awaken. We also need to be wary of toxins, the consumption of toxins in what we see and hear. The toxins of violence, hatred, and fear in television programs, movies, books, and the internet are just as influential and damaging. We need to be careful in what we consume through each of our senses, and to make wise choices in what we read and view. Precepts are not designed to prevent us from having a good time. They help us to find and develop the inner strength to think and conduct ourselves correctly. By knowing how to be more mindful in our thoughts, speech, and conduct, we will be freer and less worried about behaving improperly or inadvertently hurting others. We will have the confidence that we are on the right path to liberate ourselves and to help all beings be liberated as well. And with that confidence in our chosen path, at some point in our learning and practice, we will likely wish to formally commit ourselves to the Buddhist path. To do this, we take refuge in the three jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. When we do so, we are not taking refuge in someone or something outside of ourselves. The three jewels represent virtues that are already within each of us, and thus taking refuge in the three jewels is to return to the sanctuary of our own true nature, to our own innate virtues and goodness. When we take refuge in the Buddha, we are leaving blind faith and delusion behind us as we seek to awaken and uncover the true nature within us. The Buddha was an ordinary man who attained supreme enlightenment. He wisely understood the causes of pain and unhappiness, and compassionately showed us the path he had taken, so that we too might break free from suffering. Each of us has the same true nature as the Buddha. Each of us has the potential to look within and return to that true nature. The choice to do so is entirely up to us. To take refuge in the Buddha is to make a commitment to ourselves, to our inner Buddha nature. That commitment says that we will do everything we can to awaken and to uncover the inner goodness, compassion, and wisdom that lie deep within us. When we take refuge in the Dharma, we are returning from incorrect views to right views and correct understanding. Our present lack of awareness and proper comprehension have obstructed us from seeing the reality of life and caused us to look at everything in a distorted way, as if we were looking at things through a tiny, blurred window. When our minds become pure and our thoughts, our misperceptions are replaced with right understanding, we will give rise to wisdom and will be able to see everything clearly. Since sutras are records of the Buddha's teachings and describe the truth of the universe, we can use the sutras as guidelines. If our thinking coincides with what is in the sutras, then our comprehension is correct. Only when we clearly see the whole can our viewpoints and understanding be wise. The teachings of all Buddhas flow from their true natures. They teach us how to let go of benefiting solely ourselves, to attain purity of mind, to see life clearly, and to become enlightened. Upon hearing the teachings, we should be respectful and remind ourselves to cultivate right understanding and proper views. When we take refuge in the Sangha, the community of those who practice the teachings, we are returning from pollution and dissension to purity of mind and harmony. As we associate with those who practice understanding and loving kindness, and who feel and practice as we do, we will begin to learn from them. Currently, our minds, spirits, and bodies are impure. The Buddha taught us that everything is a reflection of the mind. Everything, therefore, arises from the mind. In other words, from our thoughts and feelings. When our minds begin to clear, allowing us to see and understand why things happen, we will stop judging others and cease wanting them to meet our expectations. As we interact with others and handle situations more harmoniously, we will begin to be content with who we are. Sincerely taking refuge in the three jewels will help us to restore the perfect wisdom and virtues of our true nature, so that we can attain clarity, freedom, and genuine happiness. It is best to take the three refuges with a monastic who you think will be a good mentor to you, someone who you can learn from, seek assistance from, and be associated with. If, however, you have no access to a monk or nun, you can take the refuges yourself as an alternative. When you do take the refuges with a monk or nun, remember, he or she is simply passing on the vow to you and serving as a witness. You are not taking refuge in that individual. I am often asked why I became a Buddhist, why I took refuge in the three jewels. Buddhism is logical, and for me, it feels right. The Buddha himself exemplified compassion, joy, and equanimity. He practiced what he taught. He was honest. He advised us not to blindly believe anyone, but to carefully consider what that person is saying. He was open-minded. He spoke of ending the wars within each of us to find peace without. He was insightful. He taught that our lives are the result of what we had previously thought, said, and done. He experienced, espoused, and epitomized the reality of the oneness of the universe. Ultimately, the reason that the Buddha's logical approach feels right for me is that Buddhism appeals to my innermost nature, my own Buddha nature. The next question that I am often asked is, what school do I practice? My practice is the Pure Land School of Mahayana Buddhism, which is widely practiced here in Asia. Though still in its formative years in the West, its roots go all the way back to ancient India. Many people generally think in terms of only one Buddha, Shakyamuni, who lived about 2,500 years ago. But since any sentient beings can awaken, and innumerable beings have, there are innumerable Buddhas. Shakyamuni Buddha, after his enlightenment, explained that he saw not only his past lifetimes, but also how the future would unfold. Shakyamuni saw people in our time having more afflictions, worries, and wandering thoughts. Our deep-seated bad habits having become even more